My name is Alora, and I just watched my husband's family humiliate me at what was supposed to be a peaceful reunion. They called me worthless, a gold digger, not worthy of their son. What they didn't know? My quiet husband Lucas commands armies and owns half the world. Big mistake. Hey everyone, I'm Alora, and today I'm sharing the most insane family drama story you'll ever hear. Before I spill all the tea about how my husband's family learned the hard way not to mess with me, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. You know, I always thought I had a pretty normal life. My name is Alora. I'm 28 years old, and I teach kindergarten in a small town called Millfield. Every morning, I wake up in our cozy little house with white picket fences, make coffee for two, and head off to spend my day with 30 adorable 5-year-olds who think I'm the most important person in the world. It's simple, it's peaceful, and honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Well, that's what I thought until 3 weeks ago, when my entire world got turned upside down. See, I'm married to this incredible man named Lucas. We've been together for 2 years now, and he's everything you'd want in a husband. He's gentle, thoughtful, brings me flowers every Friday, and makes the best pancakes on Sunday mornings. The only thing that ever seemed a little off was how he never talked about his family. I mean, never. Not once in 2 years. Whenever I'd bring up his parents or siblings, he'd get this distant look in his eyes and change the subject. He'd say things like, "They're complicated," or "We don't really keep in touch. I always figured maybe they had some falling out, you know? Families can be messy." I didn't want to push. Lucas told me he worked in security, which explained why he traveled sometimes and why he was always so physically fit. He'd disappear for a few days here and there for work, but he was never specific about what kind of security work he did. I assumed maybe corporate security or something boring like that. He was so humble about everything, drove a simple pickup truck, wore jeans and t-shirts, shopped at the same grocery store as me. Just a regular guy. But then, 3 weeks ago, everything changed when his brother Ryan called about his upcoming wedding. I'll never forget that phone conversation. Lucas went completely rigid when he saw Ryan's name on the caller ID. He answered with this careful voice I'd never heard before, like he was talking to a stranger. After he hung up, he sat there for the longest time just staring at his hands. "My brother's getting married," he finally said. "He wants us to come to the engagement party." I was thrilled. After 2 years of wondering about his mysterious family, I was finally going to meet them. But Lucas looked like he'd rather have a root canal. When I asked why he seemed so worried, he just shook his head and said, "They're different from us, Alora. They care about things that don't matter." I thought he meant they were snobby or something. Boy, was I in for a shock. The drive to his family's house took 3 hours, and with every mile, Lucas seemed to get more tense. He kept making these phone calls, speaking in this authoritative voice that I'd never heard before. He'd say things like, "Handle it," and "That's not acceptable," in this commanding tone that made my kindergarten teacher brain do a double take. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd just say, "Work stuff," and squeeze my hand reassuringly. About an hour before we arrived, he pulled over at a gas station and turned to face me with the most serious expression I'd ever seen on his face. "Alora," he said, taking both my hands in his. "No matter what happens today, no matter what anyone says or does, remember that I love you exactly as you are. You don't need to change anything about yourself to impress these people. You're perfect." I laughed and kissed him, thinking he was just being sweet. "Lucas, I'm sure your family is going to love me. How bad could they be?" Oh, honey, if I only knew. When we pulled up to his family's house, my jaw literally dropped. This wasn't a house, it was a mansion. We're talking columns, circular driveway, manicured gardens that probably cost more than my annual salary. There were luxury cars everywhere, Mercedes, BMWs, even a few I didn't recognize but looked expensive. I looked down at my outfit and suddenly felt so small. I'd worn my best dress, a simple cream-colored one I'd bought at the local department store for $60. It was pretty, I thought, but standing in front of this palace, I felt like I was dressed in rags. "Lucas," I whispered, gripping his arm, "you didn't tell me your family was wealthy." He looked at the mansion with what I now realize was distaste. Money isn't everything, Alora. Remember that. The front door opened before we even reached it, and I got my first look at Lucas's mother, Helen. She was perfectly put together, designer dress, expensive jewelry, not a hair out of place. But the way she looked at me, it was like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "Lucas, darling," she said, embracing him while completely ignoring me. "You look casual." Then her eyes landed on me, and I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees. She looked me up and down like she was evaluating livestock, and I could practically see her adding up the cost of my entire outfit in her head. "And you must be—" She paused, like she couldn't quite bring herself to say the word wife. "This is Alora," Lucas said firmly, putting his arm around me. "My wife." "Of course," Helen said with the fakest smile I'd ever seen. "How lovely." If I thought meeting his mother was bad, walking into that house was worse. The place was crawling with people who all looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Everyone was dressed to the nines, dripping in jewelry, speaking in those fake posh accents that rich people sometimes put on. And then I met the rest of the family. William, Lucas's father, barely looked up from his phone when we were introduced. He gave me a limp handshake and immediately started talking to Lucas about business opportunities and networking. Ryan, the groom-to-be, seemed nice enough until his fiancée Amanda arrived. Amanda was everything I wasn't: tall, blonde, designer everything, and with an attitude that made it clear she thought she was God's gift to humanity. The moment she saw me, she got this little smirk on her face like she'd just won the lottery. And then there was Kate, Lucas's sister. Kate was maybe 25, dressed in what I'm sure was a $1,000 outfit, and had mastered the art of the backhanded compliment. "Oh, what a unique dress," she said when we were introduced. "Very rustic." But the worst part wasn't even their obvious judgment. It was watching Lucas. My confident, loving husband seemed to shrink in this house. He was polite but distant, like he was wearing a mask. It broke my heart to see him so uncomfortable in what should have been his childhood home. The real nightmare started during cocktail hour. Helen cornered me while Lucas was talking to his father, and the interrogation began. "So tell me, dear, what do you do for work?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew and disapproved. "I'm a kindergarten teacher," I said proudly. "I love my job and I'm good at it." The silence that followed was deafening. Helen exchanged a look with Kate that was so loaded with judgment, I actually felt it like a physical blow. "How noble," Helen finally said. "And your family? What do they do?" "My dad's a mechanic, and my mom works at the local diner," I replied, starting to feel defensive. "They're wonderful people." More silence, more looks. William chose that moment to join the conversation, and somehow made things worse. "Tell me, Alora, does your family have any connections, business contacts, political influence?" I stared at him blankly. "Connections? She means," Amanda chimed in with a laugh, "do your people know anybody important?" "My people. Like I was from another species." "My family knows lots of important people," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The sheriff, the mayor, the pastor at our church. Everyone in our town is important to us." The condescending laughter that followed still makes my skin crawl. These people were laughing at me, at my family, at everything I held dear. I felt tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. That's when Kate decided to really go for the kill. "Lucas," she called across the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're all just dying to know. How did you meet your wife?" The way she said wife made it sound like a dirty word. Lucas appeared at my side immediately, like he could sense trouble. "We met at a coffee shop," he said simply, taking my hand. "How romantic," Amanda gushed in a voice dripping with sarcasm. "A little small-town coffee shop encounter, like something out of a movie." "It was romantic," I said firmly. "Lucas ordered his coffee wrong and I helped him fix it. We talked for 3 hours." "And you had no idea who he was?" Kate asked with fake innocence. I looked at Lucas, confused. Who he was? He was Lucas. Sweet, funny Lucas who made terrible jokes and left huge tips. The family exchanged more of those looks. Helen actually rolled her eyes. That's when Ryan decided to join the pile-on. Alora, he said with mock seriousness, you do realize that our Lucas could have had anyone, right? Daughters of senators, heiresses, supermodels. But he chose me, I said quietly, feeling Lucas's hand tighten around mine. Yes, William said thoughtfully. The question is why. The implication hit me like a slap. They thought I was a gold digger. They thought I'd somehow tricked or trapped their precious son into marrying beneath his station. I excused myself to the bathroom, where I finally let the tears fall. I stared at myself in their fancy mirror with its golden frame and crystal lighting, and for a moment I saw what they saw, a small-town nobody in a cheap dress who didn't belong in their world. But then I remembered Lucas's words in the car. You're perfect. And I realized he was right. There was nothing wrong with me. There was something wrong with them. When I came back out, I heard them before I saw them. They were all clustered in the living room, talking in low voices, but not low enough. She's clearly after his money, Helen was saying. I mean, look at her. She screams desperate. The question is, William added, how much will it cost to make her go away? Maybe we should have an intervention, Kate suggested. Make Lucas see reason before he ruins his life completely. Or ruins ours, Amanda chimed in. I mean, can you imagine having her at family functions? The embarrassment. They were talking about me like I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. These people didn't even know me, and they'd already decided I was worthless. That's when I heard Ryan's voice. Don't worry. Lucas will come to his senses eventually. This is probably just a phase. You know, slumming it with the common folk. He'll get bored. I was about to march in there and give them a piece of my mind when Lucas appeared beside me. I don't know how long he'd been standing there, but his face was a mask of cold fury that I'd never seen before. Lucas, I whispered, I think we should go. But he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at his family with an expression that made my blood run cold. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, deeper, more commanding, absolutely deadly. You have 30 seconds to apologize to my wife. The room went silent. Then Helen laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, Lucas, don't be so dramatic. We're just being honest about the situation. 20 seconds, he said, and something in his tone made everyone stop smiling. Lucas, really, William started. We're family. We're looking out for your best interests. 10 seconds. Ryan stepped forward with a patronizing smile. Come on, brother. You can't seriously be upset that we're concerned about you marrying someone so incompatible. That's when Lucas's phone rang. He answered it without breaking eye contact with his family. General Martinez, he said in that commanding voice I'd heard in the car but hadn't understood. Yes, I need the security detail at the family estate. Now. I stared at him. General Martinez? Security detail? What was happening? Within minutes, and I mean minutes, the sound of vehicles filled the circular driveway. Through the massive windows, I watched as black SUVs surrounded the house. Men in expensive suits began filing through the front door, and every single one of them addressed my kindergarten teacher husband as Commander. Helen's face went white. William actually dropped his drink. Kate and Amanda stood there with their mouths hanging open like fish. Lucas, Helen whispered, what is this? My husband, my sweet, humble, pancake-making husband, looked at his family with the coldest expression I'd ever seen on a human face. Allow me to reintroduce myself, he said in that terrifying voice. I am Lucas Storm, CEO and founder of Storm Defense Industries. You might know me better by my military designation, the Ghost Commander. The silence in that room was deafening. I watched as the color drained from every face, as the reality of what they'd done began to sink in. Storm Defense Industries. Even I knew that name. It was in the news all the time. Government contracts, military technology, international security. They were worth billions. For the past 2 years, Lucas continued, I've been living quietly with my wife in a town where people judge each other by their character, not their bank account. Alora fell in love with me when she thought I was just a guy who worked security and couldn't figure out how to order coffee. She married me for who I am, not what I have. She is the most genuine, kind, intelligent woman I've ever met, and she's worth more than all of you combined. Helen tried to speak, but he held up a hand. You had your chance to treat her with respect. Instead, you insulted her, mocked her family, and suggested that I pay her to leave. You treated the woman I love like she was garbage. He pulled out his phone and made another call. Peterson, I need you to pull the government contracts for Whitmore and Associates. He looked directly at William. That's your law firm, isn't it, Dad? William's face went ashen. Lucas, you can't. Already done. Kate, how's the gallery doing? Because as of tomorrow morning, your biggest investor is pulling out. Ryan, I hope your startup has other funding sources, because Sterling Ventures just withdrew their support. One by one, he dismantled their lives with phone calls. Helen's charity foundation lost its major donors. Amanda's family business found itself under federal investigation. Everything they cared about, their status, their money, their connections, vanished with a few words from the man they'd just spent the evening humiliating. But the most shocking part wasn't watching them beg and grovel as they realized what they'd lost. It was the revelation of who I'd married. Lucas Storm, the ghost commander. I'd read articles about him, the mysterious defense contractor who'd built an empire worth $47 billion, the man who had presidents on speed dial, the military genius who'd revolutionized modern warfare, and he'd been making me pancakes every Sunday morning for 2 years. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered as we walked away from that house full of broken, desperate people. He stopped and cupped my face in his hands. Because I wanted someone to love me, not my money. I wanted to be just Lucas to somebody. You gave me that gift, Alora. You saw me, not my bank account. That's more precious than anything I could ever buy. As we drove away in his simple pickup truck, which I now realized probably cost more than most people's houses, I thought about everything that had just happened. The family that had mocked me, called me worthless, suggested I was after their son's money, had just learned that I'd married one of the most powerful men on earth without even knowing it. The irony was beautiful. But you know what the best part was? When we got home to our little house with the white picket fence, Lucas still made me pancakes the next morning. Because that's who he really is, not the ghost commander, not the billionaire CEO, but the man who loves me enough to hide his empire just to be sure I love him for the right reasons. And I do love him. I love him for his terrible jokes and his gentle hands and the way he reads bedtime stories to my kindergarten class when he visits. I love him for choosing me when he could have had anyone, and for protecting me when his own family tried to tear me down. Those people learned something that day. Money can't buy class. Power doesn't come from putting others down. And sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous of all. And that's how I went from being the unsuitable wife to being married to one of the most powerful men on earth. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. If you loved this crazy story, hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable tales. Comment below, have you ever been underestimated by someone's family? I want to hear your stories. Don't forget to check out my other videos about shocking family secrets. Thanks for listening to my story, and remember, never judge a book by its cover.